class, my name is Miss Leslie and today we're going to learn about human proportions, and what better way to learn than with Spider-Man. Let's get started. First of all, what we want to do is practice what a human proportion is. And we can do that easily by just deciding how tall we want our person to be and where we want them to stand. And then we divide this in half. That's their hip line. We're going to divide this in half again, and that's their armpit line. This is their chin, this is their waist, and this halfway mark here is their knees. So let's get started with the hips, because that's the halfway mark, and that's a really good place to start. So we'll do that. We'll make two lines of how wide we want their hips to be. Now let's draw their head. Let's just say we're going to have them look a little bit off to the side. And then the next line down, surprisingly, is the armpits. But we want to take about the width of the head times 2. It's like if that was the middle line right there. We want to do 2 lines right there for the armpits. And then the waist just depends on if you're doing a male or female, how far in you want the waist to come. But if it's a male, he's going to have like a little bit of straighter hips. Today we're going to do Spider-Man, so we'll do the straighter hips. And then where his leg starts here is a little bit lower. And we're going to join that up with we're going to do 2 parentheses here for his knees. Now on the upper part of the leg, it's always bigger and it comes down and it's more narrow at the knee. And same thing with the inner part of the leg. Now with the calf, what we want to do is about this halfway mark is where we want the calf to come in a little bit more narrow. So we're going to do that. And then halfway in between this is where we want the ankle. And we've got some ankle bones here. And we're going to, this foot right here, we're going to have this one spread out straight towards us. So all we have to do is just this triangular shape. And then his calf comes in narrow above the ankle. And then this leg over here, we're going to have the leg pointing out. So again, I'm going to do his knee, but this time it's going to be 2 parentheses facing the same way, not like how you would enclose a word over here. And this part of the leg is going to be a little more straight, and this part of the leg is going to come out a little bit more. Same thing with his calf. We're going to have the back part of the calf come out a little bit more. And then about this halfway mark, it's going to come in. And about halfway in between here is the ankle. But this time it doesn't show because it's in the middle of the leg there. But the foot that comes out a little bit at the heel right there. And then you're going to do the instep up, and this part of the leg is straight, but you've got your instep here that is a little higher, and then we're going to come down to the toes and we're going to round this out. Now the size of his foot is going to be about the same length as his head. So just keep in mind that the foot is a little bit bigger. It's about the size of the head. And then the hand only goes up to about where the hairline is. So next we're going to do the hand. And the neck, of course, attaches to the head very nicely. And the shoulders do slope down. And then for the arms, it's so cool. The elbow meets the waist. So on the inside of the arm, we've got some muscle here. and we've got some rounded shoulders because he's got some muscle too. And then the elbow is going to be, it's going to be a little more angular, and this part of the hand, of the wrist, is going to come down. We've got some more shape on the inside of that arm. Now this hand right here, I'm just going to have it going out. Part of it is hidden, that thumb is hidden, and it's going to curl some of the fingers. But it's always going to be a little shorter on the pinky side. And then with these fingers, you can just divide them in half, and divide them in half again, and divide them in half again. And there you've got his hand. Now, the other side, I'm going to have his arm doing something different. And this is kind of stiff, but it's just to show proportions. So it doesn't really matter, but we're doing going to have this arm go out, and this part of the arm is more straight, as is this. And each section here is about the same size as his head. So we're going to do some muscles right there and right there. And then we're going to have his hand. And I like to do a kind of a cone or triangular shape coming out. And then it's going to go straight. And then it's going to kind of start a little lower here and get a little higher where the pointer finger is. And we're going to bring it down. And we're going to bring the thumb about halfway up through those fingers. Now this part of the finger slopes down too, and we can divide these again by just dividing each space in half. This whole hand should equal about this part of the face right there. So now we have our basic measurements. This is the hip, the first division up through the middle, and then the next division is the pit, the armpit. The next division between this is the chin. And we've got the waist and the hip. And this would also be where the wrists would go, if I put his wrist down by his hip. And then this midpoint here would be the tips of the fingers. And this is the knee. This is where the calf gets smaller, and this is where the foot is. So just with those basic divisions, we've got a human being that's divided into 8 parts. And for sure, if you have somebody that you like the human proportions of, divide them up and do them like that. This is just basic and average. So that way we can get started on our Spider-Man. So first of all, we're going to draw his head. And when we're drawing, try to use the pictures as a guide, but not something that you're doing exactly the same, because this is your drawing and you want it to be yours. So we're going to draw his head first, and in the middle of the head would be the eyes. But on this Spider-Man, that's where his eyes come together. Underneath his mask, his eyes are probably lower, but he's trying to look a little bug-like. So we're going to bring these eyes up a little bit. Then what we're going to do is just kind of look at how Spider-Man's webbing is. And he's got 2 right here. So we're going to bring this way. He's got 1 in between his eye and the ones we just did. So we're going to bring that like that. He's got 1 that's coming off the edge of his eye, 1 in the middle right here, 1 at this corner. And at this part of the inner corner of the eye, he's got another 1. And we're gonna just kind of continue. And to mirror this part right here where we did these 2, we're gonna do these two right here. And then, of course, he's got this one going that way. Okay, so we have a start for our Spider-Man. And I'm just going to do one decision about where I want this webbing to go. And then I'm going to mirror it along the rest of his face. So that way we don't have to keep deciding where we want his webbing to be. And I'm going to continue this around to his chin and then work my way up again. So we'll do this one. And with all these lines, you can kind of see this is just fun. I've always loved doing spider webs. So here you go. There we go. We got our basic Spider-Man face. And from his head, we're going to do his whole body. Now, this thing that we just drew, it's just all flat. But there's not going to be very many times in life where someone is flat like that, right up against a wall. So we have to kind of go back in space and make things smaller and come forward and make things bigger. But first of all, I'm going to decide what part of Spider-Man is in line with his head. And I think that this arm right here is in line with his head. So I'm going to, first of all, do his shoulders. And I already know that if I take his head width and do his shoulders, that his armpits, if he was standing up straight, would be right here. But it's not. He's leaning over. So I'm going to go about half that distance, but I'm still going to take the width of his head and go about, like, let's just say this was like the center part of his body. I'm going to draw this guideline right there. I'm going to take it out that far. And on this side, I'm going to do the same. So I know that's my guideline. Now I'm going to connect up his shoulder right here to his head. And remember, this is your Spider-Man, so you got to make it yours. And hopefully it won't look exactly like mine, but it will be your own Spider-Man. So now we've got our reference point for that. And I know since this arm right here is the same, I can take this head and go there to his elbow and there to his wrist. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this right here to be his elbow. And I'm going to take this same measurement here and have that be where his wrist is. So there, we've got a good start for our Spider-Man. Now, he has this other arm, but it's a little more forward. So I'm going to take the same measurement with my head, and I know I'm going to add a little bit to his arm right there. So I'm going to have this elbow come down a little bit more, and I'm going to connect this again, this reference point right here. And we're going to give him a nice shaped arm. And then this right here is more forward too, but because it's bent and because the elbow is a little more forward and this wrist is a little more receded, we're going to look at this and it's a little smaller. So I'm going to take the same length of the head right there, and I'm going to draw that right there. Of course, I'm drawing with a pencil, so of course, you know, we're going to correct and erase as we go along, and that's totally normal. So we've got this really good reference here. We're going to leave the hands till a little bit later, but I know from my picture right here that his waist comes to about here. So I'm not going to worry about, and his other leg goes up like there. So I'm not going to worry about measuring this. I'm just going to connect up about where I think his waist is. And I think I brought that in a little too much, so I'm going to bring that in. And remember, this is your drawing, so you got to make it look how you think your Spider-Man should look. I'm going to bring his chest down just a little bit like that. Okay. Now for his leg. This hip right here is a little receded. So I'm going to take this and go, okay, it's about 1.5 head lengths. So it's not the normal 2 that it would be. So it would be about right here. And I can just put his knee in and just connect up. And now his heel right here, let's look at this. We've got this head length and we've got this, and this is about 1.5 as well, which is just right because this would be, normally it would be 2 head lengths, and this would be also, but because this is back a little bit further, it's 1.5. So I know that I can put my heel about right here. And now I can connect this up. So I've got his calf right here, and it's going to start receding in. And then up here, I'm going to do this calf. And you'll notice that mine is not exactly like the picture that I'm drawing. And that's because this is my picture, and I want it to be different. This is just a reference point using this picture. So now let's look again. We've got this head, we've got the knee here, and that. This leg looks like it's about in the same line as his head. So on the same plane as his head. So we're going to take his head, put it about where his hip is, and go up, and know that we can put his knee right here. And now we can connect up this leg right here. And then the same thing, we can take, since this is in line, we know we can do 2 heads down and then put his heel about right here. So I'm going to do a little bit of a shape of his foot. We know that heel goes back a little bit. And then we know his calf starts out bigger and then it gets smaller as it meets up with his ankle. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. We're going to bring this like this. And now his foot is a little bit forward. So we're going to do his toe. And he's got toe socks on. This is so cool. I'm going to go like that. Now, we've got our basic Spider-Man shape, and we totally can adjust this with, future lines in the future. But one important thing he really needs is his spider. So we're going to get this going. He's got 3 legs up at the top and 3 coming this way, and he's got these coming down here, and now our exciting, let's draw the lower part right here. And what I'd like you to do is look at how would this human being connect even more than the picture that you're looking at. Okay, now he's got his hands, and we know that they're shortened because they're not going to be as long as the face. this part of the face because they're foreshortened. So we're just going to take our head of where we think they would be, and then it's about 3/4 of this part of the face that you would usually see, that up to the forehead. So I'm going to put this right here, but I'm going to take about 1/4 of that off, and I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. Well, his thumb. And then I'm going to draw this shape right here. He's got some. All right, we're going to continue on with his fingers, and then we'll do his webbing. What we want to do is take this wrist right here, and this is going to be in line with his pointer finger. So we're going to give his fingers a little bit of shape. If you notice with your fingers, it goes in a little bit and a little wider where all the joints are. So we're going to do that with his fingers. And then his webbing is super cool because it has like little finger things right there. And then we're going to give him his thumb. Next, we're going to draw this hand with these fingers behind. Let's look at this one. And if you noticed, I outlined the lines already that I did in pencil. Just to make this video a little bit shorter, you can pause and at any time and go over your lines. I like to go over my lines 2 times so that they don't just look like an outline, but they look more like a shape. This hand right here is behind this hand, so it's smaller. And if we take the measurement of this, it's only about half of his face. So I'm going to take half of his face, and I know that that's where I'm going to put his hand. So his thumb right here is about in line with his wrist. So I'm going to draw the bottom of his thumb right there. And then right here, he only has 2 fingers showing. So about with this part of the wrist right here, I'm going to look at that, and let's just say that's halfway in between his thumb and this finger. So from here, I'm going to draw, bring this line down. I'm going to skip over about right there, and I know that that finger is going to be about right there, and then I'm going to put his last finger that I can see about right there. Now I'm going to connect this shape right here with his thumb and with giving it some curves, because of course our thumb it's very curvy. Now this finger right here is, kind of bent. Actually, yeah, I don't know if my fingers do that, but okay, his fingers do. So we're going to follow that. And then we're going to get up here and connect this up to this part of his wrist. And this finger right here, I'm going to give that a little bit of a curve and do the same thing and give his palm a little bit of a shape too. And it's because he's putting lots of pressure on those fingers. Okay, now his foot, in this picture you can't see very much, but in mine I can see it a little bit more. I'm going to look at that measurement, and that's about half of his face. So I'm going to put this right here where his toe would be, and then just a few more details and we're almost done. So I'm outlining some things for you so that it's a little easier to see, and I'll just finish up in pen. So his foot is like half his face, so we know that is good. And now the fun part, we get to do all his webbing. So first of all, he's got these spider socks. So we can go ahead and put those on. And for these, what we want to do is kind of follow along the curvature of his foot and then go up into his sock and then follow the shape of his calf and kind of bring it down to his feet like that. We're going to do these lines first because they are easier to do and then add in the curved lines later. So he's got this kind of collar right here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just do some webbing though to kind of set this as kind of the stage for everything else that I'm going to do. So this way going up on his neck comes up kind of following this curvature. So we got that, and then we can just fill in these lines. And then wherever the webbing is a little shorter, like through here, it's going to be a little closer together. And then we need to look at these lines coming down through his chest. These lines right here are at his waist are really going in like this. And then as they come up above his chest, they're going to connect up to this part of his collar. And I think I'm going to bring this collar down a little bit more too. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit. So I'm going to follow the same curves that I did up above. And then I'm going to start connecting these lines and just going to follow along like what I would imagine how his chest would look, like whatever shape that would be. And then that's good. And then we're going to come down his arms with these lines right here. And I'm going to choose this line because this is kind of more in the middle. And I'm going to go more like that. And then this line on this edge of his arm is going to follow the outside shape of the musculature and the shoulder and the elbow and the forearm like that. And I'll just do the same over here and have that connect up to that finger. And then we'll do another one like that. Okay, now he's wearing stripes, but we got to make him look like he's wearing webs. So the main thing with the webbing is that if it's something that is going in, it's going to be closer together. And then wherever it is more straight to our vision, then it's going to be more evenly spaced. And we'll kind of go up on the ends here because it's going around his leg. And this one right here can be more straight with just a little bit up. And then this one is going to go up even more on the left hand side. And then we're going to bring it, oh, one other thing, he's got the tips of his fingers and toes kind of defined with this webbing, so we're going to go ahead and put that in first so we can preserve this spacing on all his fingers. It's almost like, you know, fingernails or something, but this is going to be a little shorter because it's going back in space. And so we got that. So we can do the same thing on his other side. And I like to come down just one side first because then it kind of, I only have to think about the spacing once, and then I can kind of fill in with the webbing on either side. And you could probably add your own personal touches. I know, like, my son used to play with Spider-Man toys, and they were all different in their own way. So you could probably add your own personal touches to this. And then we're going to do this right here is going to be spaced a little bigger. And then through here, it's retracting, it's going back into space. So we're going to do some thinner lines there, and then again, bring it out a little wider right here. Spider-Man, he's a good guy. Well, I guess all the superheroes are good guys, right? That's what makes them superheroes. But each of you can be a superhero too. You'll all have some sort of power eventually in your life, and just doing good with that, that's what's gonna set you apart from everybody else. So I'm gonna go ahead and see, like right here, it's gonna be a little closer together because it's going back in space, and here it's gonna be very close together. So we can just go ahead and match up all these lines, and then we'll have that all taken care of, and you can just finish up on your own. And I hope you enjoyed this video of Spider-Man and learning the human proportions. Oh, one last thing I almost forgot to say. With ink pen, it's just pretty much one thickness. So you will want to go through and do an outline again of all of the exterior. And this helps can kind of little self-correct anything that you felt like, oh, maybe that part was too big or that part was too small. So it kind of helps with that. And then also, our eye really doesn't like just like to look at one even line. If it's a little bigger in some places and a little smaller in places, that's what's really nice for our eye to see. So even if, like I'm trying to go over this line, but of course I'm not gonna get it exactly right. There's gonna be places that are gonna be a little thicker and a little thinner. So it's like this part of the head right here. Got this part that I can even out right now. And his eye, I already went over it once, but it's kind of nice to and like if you make a mistake like that where I did that little thing, just make it a little thicker there. And then you're almost done. Still have to do this striped arm too, but it would just be the same as the other arm. You can see, especially, with Spider-Man, you've got so much going on. It's kind of like he's a fun character to draw. So I'm just gonna do this, and I hope you enjoyed this session with learning the human proportions with Spider-Man. Just remember the halfway mark on any human is the hips, and halfway between the hips and the top of the head is the armpits. And then halfway between the armpits and the hips is the waist. And in between the armpits and the top of the head is the chin. And halfway between your hips and your knees are your fingertips. And halfway between your knees and your feet are kind of like where your calves get a little smaller right there. So just memorizing those proportions and practicing drawing humans, and then Just remember, anything that's closer to you is going to be bigger, and anything that's further from like the head and the shoulders, it's going to be smaller. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Can't wait to see what you draw.